Gosh, hello, hello. Y'all have me in my dingy and miserable home studio because my work studio has a terrible, terrible Wi-Fi connection. So, hello, and thank you for every single stream forgiving me for the mess behind me. It is just about cat dinner time, so if you see the worst cats in the world screaming, they're lying. They're not being tortured. They just want things to go faster, which don't we all? Today, we are going to have a session that has a lot of things in it, but a session that has a lot of things that we're not going to use all the time. And I really love that. So, a lot of the things we're going to take a look at, we are going to breeze right through. But there's also quite a bit of solo work after this. So, everything's terrible, but this is just HTML. It can't hurt us. Let's take a look at our notes for today. And if we recall correctly, we're on is it the last session of Semantic HTML today? Gosh, even though it is the last day we're focusing on Semantic HTML, I bet $1 y'all can guess that. So just to throw it out to folks who are here early, just because we're no longer explicitly studying Semantic HTML, do y'all get to just forget about Semantic HTML when you're writing it? You know what? That's too easy. That's a ringer of a question. Y'all know, just because we're not explicitly talking semantic HTML as we continue to work through HTML and CSS, it doesn't mean we don't have to pay attention to it. All right, first let's go through the fast things. I love a fast things. The first thing we learned about was how to display mathematical equations and chemical formulas in HTML. The good news about this is 95% of you, it's a very open-ended question, will rarely or never have to deal with. We learned about the superscript elements that let us do tiny numbers or text above our normal text line. So actually, can I do this? How do I type this on my computer? Gosh. An example would be 2 squared. I popped that into the chat and I'll pop it on the screen as well. So the 2 with a little 2 on top is a superscript 2. Cool. And we also learned about subscript. And those are the little tiny numbers below it. I bet y'all could go ahead and guess. Do I think? Actually, not even do I think. This is relatively opinionated. If you want to just make little tiny numbers, if you want to style your numbers little tiny, y'all think you need to be using the superscript or subscript elements? No. If you want to style your numbers smaller, we're going to learn to do that with CSS. Oh gosh. So a question was like, how do we do the superscript on the chat? Is it only through copy and paste, or do HTML tags work in the chat? HTML tags, I'm so sorry, do not work in the chat. I copied and pasted it over. Daniel, you're after my own heart. Thank you. If you want to make your numbers really small, or even if you want to offset them, but you don't want them to represent the mathematical equivalent of to the blah power, we're going to use CSS to style. We got a week and a half before we do some CSS. I keep telling y'all we'll do CSS soon. We're going to do it soon. Cool. It sounds weird to say that's all we're going to talk about for mathematical equations and chemical formulas. There's a superscript element to make your little numbers above. There's a subscript element to make your little numbers below. But you're only going to use them in the mathematical and chemical contexts in which you need them. Most of us will rarely need this. This one is the one I think we're the most, heck. Streaming too much has ruined me, heck. Listen to that. So Here we are. I think this is I think out of the three different theory sections we use today, how do we represent computer code in HTML is going to be the semantic elements we've learned today that we're most likely to use. And this one's really important because maybe some of us are writing technical tutorials. I learned to do blah blah today. I'm going to show you how. Maybe some of us are writing blogs about what we're learning, and we want to include snippets of code. By including this code using the code element, it means that when users come on who are looking at your website for navigating your website using assistive technologies, they have that extra semantic knowledge of, hey, there's a code block coming up because screen readers are going to read them that code. And if they don't care about the code, giving them the option to skip it is really cool. Also, giving search engine bots the opportunity to say, hey, I've got some text here. It's code. When you're reading this, go ahead and pick up the semantic clue that this is content, this is text about code. So we've got the code element, code to open, code to close, and we can put our code inside. This could be HTML. This could be CSS when we learn it. This could be JavaScript if y'all learn it. This could be pretty much any type of computer code because we're just putting it in as character text. But we've also got, oh gosh, somebody's just asked a fantastic question that I don't know the answer to. So I'm going to look this up in a second. Hang on. I absolutely love a question like this. So hang on. We've also got the option. So we say, hey, we're going to put code blocks. We're going to put some text that contains code on our webpage. Stunning. We've talked a lot about how our HTML code tends to be indented in order to show us different levels of what's the parent and what's the child. And actually, well, remind me, I'm going to make a note. Remind Jess to talk about, oh, heck. Um, Sorry, being able to type and talk at the same time seems like the minimum requirement for streaming. Remind me to talk about indentation and human readability when we do our workshop together. So we just got a really, really fantastic question, which is, hang on, let's talk about the pre-formatted text. So the pre tag, or the pre tags, which make up our pre element, can be used with longer snippets of code, or they can be used with other types of pre-formatted text. And the reason we want to include these is that the formatting of our HTML code or the formatting of code in different programming languages makes it more human readable. So remind me, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But we had such a good question, and I want to grab this. So we can use the code element and the pre element together to say, hey, this text I'm giving you is code, but I want to paste this in a pre-formatted way. Don't use the layout flow of HTML or the layout flow of my CSS, don't apply any of those styling rules to this text. I've got it formatted just the way I want it. And Mel's saying, okay, but should we open the code? Should we start the code element first and then the pre-element, or the pre-element and then the code element? So I think very technically, both will work. But here I am on the MDN. and I'll share the link with you all on the MDN page for the pre-formatted text element, just to see. Pre-elements commonly contain code sample. Okay, so it sounds like the pre-formatted text might start first and then code, but I'm pretty sure it'll work either way. Oh gosh. Here we've got some HTML art in their example, but that's not the example I wanted. Oh, this is really important. So if you were to do cute art like this, saying you need an alternate description. Okay, and here's an example of an alternate. We're seeing a lot of fantastic. I was going to say we're seeing a lot of art examples, and I don't want that. I want a basic example. Here we're seeing pre and code. Okay, like you suggested. And pre and code again. Okay, it looks like maybe, even though I'm pretty sure both will work, it seems like both in the documentation here and in all of our examples, they say open up the pre-formatted first and then the code. If you do it the other way around, I don't think it's going to break. Yeah, Prema makes a really solid point. And Prema's saying, hey, if you're going to do just the code element by itself, it's only going to work if you want that piece of code to fit in line with your existing text. The pre tag needs to go ahead and remove your code element from the existing flow, a little bit like we saw with inline and block quotes. And Mel's asking, okay, cool. So can we use any element inside of a pre-formatted text? Well, this is such a cool, weird question. I love this. Maybe could we have a link that goes down the page instead of across? So we do have some examples here. So I love the idea of a link that's aligned differently. And I bet you, I know it's unfair where I'm always like, this is such a good idea. We should try this. The challenge is if I wanted to align text differently on my page, I would probably use CSS for that. And we haven't learned it yet. I promise we will. And when we get to how to align text, we can definitely play with that. But here we've got examples of what we might want to use pre-formatted text with. So here we've got pre-formatted text without an additional element inside it, without saying, hey, this is pre-formatted text that's code. This is just pre-formatted text by itself. And then we had two more options for elements we could nest inside it. So I'm coming all the way up. Pre-elements commonly contain code elements. SAMP. SAMP. Oh, ha ha ha. So SAMP, we don't need to worry about it yet, but this is an example of the text your computer might give you back. So code is what we're telling a computer to do, and SAMP, the HTML sample output, is showing us what we might get back. So this might be a really good one to use for showing an error message and showing an error message to a user in documentation with quite a bit of context. Oh, Mel, this is such a good point, and I'm going to come back to it. Oh, y'all are chatty today. I massively appreciate it. So we can put different text elements inside it, but these are going to be adding different semantic meaning. If you want to do something fancy like change the alignment of your text, we're going to do that with CSS almost all the time. And Mel's asking because there are languages that have vertical writing. And yeah, so there are different writing alignments with different languages. And generally speaking, HTML will respect that pretty well. So if you're working with a language that writes right to left, you should usually just be able to put that into your HTML as expected. There's a ton of work on standards that means changing that alignment should work okay. But just checking to see. Yeah, I'll save this. I was going to say, hey, here's how we change the alignment if we weren't using a language that was vertical, but we'll come back to that when we go to CSS, I promise. And there's never any obligation to be chatty in the chat. Everything's chill. So if you were just using a little tiny bit of code and you want it to fall in line, just code by itself. Not a problem. Throw that code element in there. If you have a bigger piece of code and you want it to be pre-formatted to keep that human readable context, beautiful, stunning, not a problem. We're going to use the pre element and sit that code element inside it. Yeah, this is probably going to be the one you're most likely to use. Working with the U, the S, and the Ruby element. This is going to be a weird one because the first two, I'm going to tell you to mostly ignore. The unarticulated annotation element is a leftover element that we've tried to repurpose. So the unarticulated annotation element used to be called the underline element. And what it used to do before CSS is it used to underline your words for you. We used it for styling. We used it for presentational HTML. And these days, you could use it to add semantic emphasis, but we have the emphasis element and we have the strong element. We have a bunch of different elements that say, hey, pay some extra attention to this element. And if we wanted something to show up with an underline, please, please, please take it away. Tell me, how would I do that? How would Jess lovingly yell at you to make something appear in underlined without using the unarticulated annotation element? There's a hint in the notes. Generally speaking, you're not going to use the unarticulated. Yeah, Lucia's just like, Jess, Jess, Jess. You keep saying, we're going to learn about this with CSS. We're going to learn about this with CSS. Underlining feels like styling. If you needed to semantically mark that this text was important, we'd use one of the semantic elements that means something more. Yeah. The strike through element is a little bit similar. It used to be used to we used to use it to strike through text to give us that effect. And you could still do it. You could use this element and it would have the semantic meaning of this has been redacted or this is no longer applicable. But semantically, that's rarely what we actually need. And if you wanted that strike through visual effect, we would use CSS. When we learn it, we'll learn it soon, I promise. The last one is called a Ruby element. And I'm going to come in and take a look at the tab real fast. Overwhelmingly, especially based on what time we're running this live stream, overwhelmingly, oh gosh, Mel is saying, Mel looked up why Ruby is called Ruby. This is beautiful. And Ruby refers to a specific size of typeset printing. Do you know what? This is me wasting y'all's time, but I'm making a note for me. Look up history of Ruby element because that's fascinating. So it can be confusing for folks because there's a Ruby HTML element and there's a completely unrelated Ruby programming language. And apparently, thank you, it's called Ruby because that's an old typesetting term. Oh, and Mel's also given us a real big hint about why almost all of us won't need to worry about the Ruby element. The Ruby element is, and let's make this a bit bigger. Oh gosh, that got a lot bigger. I don't like this at all. No. Sorry. The Ruby element is used to add pronunciation to character-based languages where there are multiple possible readings of the same character. I I haven't looked this up recently, but the only one I've ever used this with is Japanese. And it's technically possible to put the Roman letter pronunciation over this, but it's super duper weird. Generally, if you saw this in the wild, oh, heck, I want, thank you. You would see the Japanese syllable characters over the kanji, the character-based characters to spell that out. Oh gosh. And yeah, if you might be doing some fancy things where you're using a character-based language or another language where the pronunciation isn't always immediately available, and this might be something you want to use. But excitingly, for folks who aren't going to be working with a character-based language that needs pronunciation above it, we don't have to worry about it. We can skip it. I love stuff that we don't have to worry about until we have to worry about it. So we also wanted to go ahead. We're going to look at the Build a Chatbot blog page. And then I'm going to look at Build an Event Hub last. Just because it's a project that you're going to do individually, it might take you a couple of days. And I'm especially interested in what kinds of interesting or creative things. So I'm going to ask y'all when we get to that, can you give me some ideas of weird or creative ways people could approach the Build an Event Hub? And it doesn't have to be something you want to use. If you just want to throw out a bunch of weird and creative ideas and let other people steal them, borrow them, benefit from them, that would be a solid thing to do. So we're going to work through a little bit of the cat blog page together, not all of it. So we're going to talk about the indentation, the human readability, that formatting in our HTML boilerplate code. And then we're going to skip to step 5. And part of this is because I'm mean. And I don't want to do every single step with you because, again, I'm mean. Oh, sorry. I'm getting told there's something wrong with my mic. Everything's terrible. Thank you. Let me go ahead and see if we can't fix that. Hey, is that sounding a bit better? When in doubt, we want to turn something off and on again. I'm just going to double check my sound settings, and I do apologize. Yeah, okay, that's feeling better. Phew. Do you know what? If y'all don't mind, keep me honest. I keep meaning to get the Wi-Fi improved in my studio where, horrifyingly, I have a really nice mic. So I'll go ahead and make that next week's chore if y'all don't mind. Okay, but I'm sorry, we're back on track. And usefully, the only thing we were talking through when I sounded nice and robot-y is how we're going to approach this. So we're going to talk about just a little bit of the Build a Cat blog page. We're going to talk about the formatting, the human readability of the boilerplate code, because we talked about the value of human readability, formatting in HTML when we talked about our tab. And if it's okay, I also am really excited to talk about lorem ipsum. We had Mel tell us that Ruby comes from the term Ruby for a Ruby element comes from typesetting. Lorem ipsum comes from typesetting as well, and I love it. So we'll talk about this, and then we'll come down and do our review of the semantic HTML before looking at the Build an Event Hub project together. What I will ask is, it's really hard to, and I constantly tell people, be creative, be creative. Yelling at folks to be creative, A, it doesn't sound like it would make me very happy if I was a learner. And B, it doesn't sound like it works. So if you all can think of what are some weird or creative or unusual ways to approach building an event hub, Get ready to throw them in the chat when we get there. It doesn't have to be something you want to use. And actually, if it's something you want to use, you might want to save it and surprise us with it. But just to share some ideas with other folks, what's an unusual or creative way you might want to approach this? So we're going to come back up. We're going to go to Build a Cat blog page. Great. So this is a step-by-step workshop. We can do this. We've seen this. And we're going to step way ahead. I'm going to skip to step 5. Ha ha ha. And I'm skipping to step 5 for 2 different reasons. Firstly, we're going to look at something that we haven't seen before, but also I want to look at the indentation here. I want to look at the formatting of this because the formatting of this makes it easier for humans to read. A lot of the semantic HTML that we've been looking at is us saying, let's make this easier for machines to read. Let's make this easier for assistive technology. The right thing to do. We always want to. Let's make this easier for bots on the web. We often want to. But when we look at the way we format our code, this is all about making it easier for humans. We love humans. The web, you know what? More and more robots on it, but you can't beat humans making things for humans. And what I want to call our attention to here is the formatting. We've got way over, pulled all the way to the left, our doc type and our HTML tag. And we could see some lines showing us where the corresponding tags come to. So our HTML, remember, that's our parent element. Everything sits inside it. So when we look at our head element, which is the child of our HTML element, we've tabbed over for this. And the reason we've tabbed over is this lets humans at a glance say, hey, inside our HTML element, what are the children? What's nested inside the different things? Inside our head element, we could see the child elements of title and meta. Stunning. So we can come in and say, our body starts here. Amazing. Our header and the children. So we've I hate the word just while teaching. You'll fuss at me if you hear me say that. Just. It's easy for folks who've been doing this for a long time to say, oh, it's just. But here, the formatting is to make it easier for you or your collaborators or your enemies, I guess, to make it easy for any human to understand what are the parent elements, what's sitting inside what. And if I need to find where's my header, I can scan for the body and say, my header is probably going to be, oh, the first child element after the body. But we are going to look at something weird for the first time. I love, y'all ain't surprised that I love weird. We're going to look at something weird for the first time, and we're going to look at something weird y'all have heard a million times. We'll do CSS soon. We'll do CSS soon. We'll do CSS soon. Y'all are getting a CSS sneak peek. We're going to talk about IDs in HTML. And we're using an ID for a really specific, oh gosh, folks in the chat are talking about typesetting, and I'm trying really hard not to get distracted. Oh gosh, you know what? As a little tiny icebreaker, and I'll ask in Discord as well, so folks who aren't joining us live still get to chime in. What are y'all's non-computer hobbies? What are your non-screen hobbies? I mention it because in the chat, a lot of folks are talking about typesetting, and I do a lot of bookbinding, so making books out of paper and card. So I'm trying not to get distracted by typesetting. But I'm not distracted. We're talking about IDs, and using IDs is going to be something we come back to a lot when we talk about CSS. Think of an ID as a name tag. It's got to be unique. Or it doesn't really work. So here, if you have an ID on your page, and we'll look at them in a second. If you have an ID on your page, gosh, people have a heck ton of hobbies. And you know what? I'm not the boss of y'all, but I would love to see websites about your hobbies as like practice projects. No, not necessarily. Well, not maybe for your event hub, huh? Mm, hang on, back on track. So an ID, there's always going to be one ID per page. An ID has to be unique. Later on, we'll learn about IDs versus classes. The big difference is that classes, I'm sorry, we'll talk about them soon, I promise, are a way to sort of create a club and assign rules for all of the members of that club. But an ID is unique. An ID, you've just got one of them. And we are doing something really interesting with our IDs here. So inside of each of our LI, and gosh, can you remind me what's going on here? So we've got a UL. This looks a lot like when we did those descriptive lists, huh? And I previewed that the descriptive lists were the most complicated types of list. Here, we're using an unordered list. Okay, not a problem. And each of these LI elements, open and close, is going to be one of our bullet points. I mean, our list items are the items in our list. So we're going to make an anchor element in each of these. So we've got an anchor, and we're going to we're going to spell that right. We're going to throw that anchor somewhere else. We're going to, we're going to close our anchor element. And I am really, really excited about this because every time we've talked about an anchor element, we've been throwing a link to a different web page, a different site on the internet, or we've been throwing the link to a different page on your web page. And this time, we're going to throw that link to a different element on your page. So here, we're going to do something super, 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 super weird. And we're going to make 3 links. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this anchor. Okay. I'm going to copy it 2 more times because all of the happiest developers I know are lazy. And I am the happiest, laziest web developer. And what we're going to do here is we're going to link to a section on our webpage. And that's real weird because we're linking someplace that doesn't exist yet. We are dreaming about the future where I have an element with this ID. And you might be saying, Jess, how do I make an element with this ID? It's cool. We're going to do it in a second. And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be way less scary. Oh, wait. So about, and then we want the anchor text here to say about. Okay. So right now, these links, I've promised you that these links will go to different sections on the same page. But right now, those sections don't exist. So this could be a section, this could be a paragraph text, we could use an ID to link to jump to different places on this page, as long as that element has the ID of about or the ID of post. And right now, those don't exist. What do you think these links are going to do before these exist? And actually, I'm asking that question. I'm not super sure. I'm going to check. So the last one is going to be contact. Okay, so excuse me, instructions. I'm going to get rid of you instructions. Here we've got RH1, Mr. Whiskers, solid looking cat, respect. We've got some text, Mr. Whiskers in the garden, our fig and fig caption, very semantic, This could just be an image. It's not. This could just be a paragraph element. It's not. We've got our figure and our fig caption. We're given a lot of semantic context about what's going on here. Oh, heck. I have mistyped that. But here, when we make elements that have this ID, clicking on this will jump to this part of the page that has it. But right now, because we don't have any elements with this ID, it does a whole bunch of absolutely nothing. Let's check our code. Heck, our second anchor element, posts. Fine. Posts. You know what? There's a lot of hard problems in web development, and spelling is the big one, isn't it? Let's check our code, and we're fine. This can't hurt us. We're gonna go a little fast through this part. While I'm doing this, under our header, I'm adding a main element. We talked about this yesterday when we were talking about semantics. Somebody tell me what the main element is all about, please. And we're going to check our code, and that works just fine. Inside, this is what I want. This is what we're digging into. Inside our main element, I'm going to add a section element with the ID of about. Okay? Why am I using a section instead of a div? Oh, Lucia, y'all are just making my life way too easy. Lucia's like, just, I got you. When we use the main element, we're giving the semantic context. And Mel's got my back as well, saying what we're doing is we're semantically communicating. Hey, if you're on this website, the stuff you're probably here for is this stuff in the main. So thank you both so much. Here I've got a section element, and I'm going to create an ID with the attribute set to about. And we haven't covered this at all. This might sound super scary, but we've got some context clues for what the syntax might look like. Let's say I don't know how to type, how the ID element should work. But I've got some clues in the documentation here. It's not an ID element, it's an ID attribute. And it's an ID attribute set to about. We've done attributes. Do you think we could just use the attribute syntax for ID? Section ID equals about. And we want to put something in the section. Like right now it's empty. Right now if we jump to it, it doesn't do much. We're going to put an H2. And that would make sense. Ooh, that's really good. Give me just a second. I see a really good question. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just juggling. So what we've got is we've got a section here. And we've got an H2 in that section. Ooh, so here's the question. Do the IDs used for links have to be on the section element? Do you know what? Do you want to try it? Can it be on any element, such as a code element? Let's try, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, do you know what? I want this to, heck. I want this to look pretty significant. So I want to move further down the page. I'm going to get rid of you for a second instruction because this is a really good question. And the question here from Mel is, Jess, I believe you that, oh, yeah, let's try this. You're saying, Jess, I believe you that I can link to a section. And we say about, we already see the about, we're not really jumping that far. Jess, we're linking to a section using an ID. Can I use an ID for something else and manage to get up or down the page using that? And we've got another linked question, which is, Jess, you're showing us how we can jump down the page. Could we also jump up? The different things we can do. We could read the documentation, but the documentation doesn't tell us this. We could look it up. Now we could look it up. You could ask somebody, but you asked me, and I am definitely going to take my favorite option. We could get weird. Let's experiment with this a minute. So I'm going to jump around a tiny bit and talk about lorem ipsum. So at step 11, we're going to see lorem ipsum for the first time. And this, let's look at the Wikipedia for this, because I love a Wikipedia. Lorem ipsum is common placeholder text. It's used in graphic design, it's used in publishing, like typesetting, very typesetting heavy chat today, and in web development. And so what the text is actually is it's a pretty incorrect version of a Roman text from Cicero, but it's messed up. It's not good. The Latin does not work. And you might be saying, Jess, why are you telling me about lorem ipsum? It's just placeholder text. Yes, but we use placeholder text all the time. So I want our web page to be longer so that jumping around, and that makes this whole point to be like, there's so many websites that generate lorem ipsum. You can tell it how many paragraphs. Yo, why would I need placeholder text? I need it right now because I want to show you visually a significantly different visual jump. But why in real? Everything's real. Why in proper web development where you're making a proper web, why might I need placeholder text? So here, I'm using this because I want to go further down the page. And part of going further down the page is I want to add some extra IDs here to jump around and see how this linking by ID works. So Mel, you were really helpful and you said, what if we linked further up as well? So how about welcome to Mr. Whisker's blog. I'm gonna put a lorem ipsum up here as well. Let's close our paragraph. So here, looking at our webpage, we've got our H1, we've got a text element, which is just a placeholder. We wanted some more filler on this page, but we didn't want to have to write it out. We got our picture of a cat, our figure of a cat, yes, our fig caption, and here we've got our links. Okay, and let's say that our H1, make our H2. Just so we keep this proper. We've got our H2, and our H2 is, what are our links? Posts. And then I'm going to put an H2 way down here. And it doesn't have to be, this could be an H3. You know what? We can't just do it for funsies, but we've got posts, we've got contact, and these don't have to say, so these don't have to have the exact same text as the section names, but keeping them similar or the same is really good for accessibility. We're keeping that semantic meaning intact. So our two questions were, can we use a non-section element to link to? So if we set the ID attribute of our contact, H3, to contact, will that work? And actually, we had two questions. We had that, and we also had, could we link up in our page? So let's come all the way to posts, and let's set that ID to posts. Cool. So the first test we're going to do is about work. Cool. About, we're linking to, we're linking to that section with the ID of about, and it works. If I link to posts, the ID of posts is that H3 way at the bottom. Oh, wait, no, posts was the one way up top. This answers all of our questions at once. So can I link to can I use an ID in an anchor element when it's not an attribute set within a section, when it's an attribute set in another element? Heck yes, you can. And Can I go up the page as well as down? Yeah. If you wanted, if you had a lot of horizontal scroll, you could link back to the left, to the right. You're jumping to the different elements. Oh, RH2 text. Oh, yeah. And that passes. Cool. This is time for the closest thing we have to a commercial, which is, y'all have heard me say this before, the boot camp is free. Free Code Camp is, I mean, free is in the name. They are a registered charity. So don't ever spend money you don't have. But if you've got the cash, and especially if you go on to get a real fancy job after this, being a free Code Camp donor is just a nice thing to do. Cool. I'm going to be really cruel. I'm not going to go through the rest of this. These are really important steps for you to take to get used to building up the different aspects of your website. And it feels samey. It seems like an exercise you've done before. And what we're doing is we're building up that muscle memory to say, cool, I'm adding a paragraph. I'm adding a paragraph. And these samey feeling exercises are going to be translated into building the websites you want to build after this. You put in a lot of paragraph tags without thinking about it. Share this tag, come back to our notes. I'm going to come down to the bottom. We're going to look at Build an Event Hub, I promise, but we're going to look at that last because it is the last session where we're explicitly focusing on semantic HTML, but it's not the last day that we're going to do semantic HTML. Here are my notes that I thought were really big things to remember, but I would also love if y'all would go ahead and call out what are your notes probably look real different than mine. So let me know what let me know what you have in your notes that I don't, just so other learners can be like, oh, good call. We probably needed this, even though Jess didn't put it down. So from the review, I made a reminder to myself to say headings, those H1, H2, H3, they need to have structural hierarchy. We can't just use them to change the text styling because it's poor semantic structure. It's unfair to folks using assistive technologies to navigate, and it's just not writing good HTML. We shouldn't use these headings to change our text stylings. We should use quite CSS. When we talk about presentational HTML, that is an old-fashioned way of writing HTML. And back in the day, we did choose HTML elements based on how they would change the way your page looked or that element looked. There's some elements that are still around, like the U tag, which is used to be underline and is now the, gosh, someone remind me, the unspecified attribute. There are elements that still exist today because they've got to be backwards compatible that do have a style impact, that have a presentational impact on our elements, but please don't use them. And especially don't use them unless you need the semantic meaning. But if there is a pressing semantic meaning for you to use strike through, nice, do it. We always want to write semantic HTML that communicates as much as possible. And in order to do this, we always use the most specific appropriate element available. We just learned today that we can use ID names attached to elements to create internal links that links to different sections of a page. And we are definitely going to come back to IDs when we talk about CSS. Folks are talking about their notes. They say, oh, somebody's saying that they want to get Emmett to work on NeoVim. Yup. We will chat about that separately. That's a very interesting thing to do, but super outside the scope of the boot camp. So I'm going to abstract this away. Mel's got Mel, you've got post-it notes on your monitors. I do take notes for stuff I want to make sure I do after a call or a class, but I also have, y'all can't see it, many a post-it note on my monitor. Oof, So, this was our review. Y'all do have a quiz that you're being asked to do completely by yourself. And please, oh, wait, the Semantic HTML root just has like a little tick box to say you reviewed it. But there's also a quiz for you to do on your own. But I wanted to talk through the very last thing before we head out for the day. So please, 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 if folks have any questions, throw them in the chat, either about building an event hub or about whatever is in your heart. But please, if you can, try to, yeah, so drop any questions you've got into the chat and we'll super excitedly take a look at them. But here, I'd also love your examples of what kind of silly or strange things could we do that would be sort of a version of an event hub, but that gives us something different to do. I see a really good question from Sunny. I'm going to save that. I've got a question from Mel as well. So I'm just going to put those in my pocket for now. And as soon as we talk through our approaches to this, we will go ahead and answer your questions. We will then take a look at what we've got to do solo after this class. And we will then go on to have a very easy morning or afternoon or middle of the night. So this is, oh gosh, we've got somebody able to come live for the first time. Hey, there's never an obligation to come live. These are available after the fact as well. Everything's super chill. So here's an example of a project that meets the requirements. A lot of time, if we're trying to get our work done, all the test passing is good enough. But y'all want to make beautiful, silly, creative, weird web pages. Getting something that just passes and then coming back and making them weird when you have time and when you learn new things, it's always a pretty fun approach. So here, it's a little, oh, the image is broken. Gosh. Here we've got 2024. That's a while back. So here we've got an example of what they've built, but it says try and give it your personal style. So please, what kind of creative or weird or lovely things, what kind of event hub could y'all be making that doesn't have something to do with tech or doesn't have this kind of web bootcamp kind of copy? So I'd love to hear y'all's ideas. And while you tell me your much better ideas, I will take a look at what our user stories are and take a look at our tests. We're just going to talk through this really briefly. If you're really, really confident with this, you might be able to put something together in a couple hours. For me, when we're looking at the labs, I like to take a little bit more time. Yeah. And Eulidil saying they did exactly this. They just built something real fast that passed the requirements, and then they're going to go back and fill it out with stuff that feels a little bit more fun later. And that sometimes stuff that passes, isn't it? Like, I just want to get it done for now. And my to do in my heart or my to do on my post it note on my monitor is to come back and make it fun later. So we need to have a header element. And this is a really good time to grab a question. So Sunny's saying a bit unrelated. It's not unrelated, but a header element, should that be, sometimes you see a bar at the top of a website that sometimes scrolls with the user or an intro section. So this can be either. So generally speaking, I think what you might be asking for is the bar at the top of a website that sometimes scrolls with the user. If you're talking about a section at the top of the website that contains links for navigation, I would use the nav element for that. The header can be the first section at the top of the website, and it can be an intro section. But really, the difference between what do we want to put in that header, what do we want to put in the first section that sees, and what's the nav element, want to be something we will have to think about. And this can mean I've got a header. This is going to be what comes at the top of my web page. Your header can have a nav inside it. So header, often that bar that scrolls with your website is indeed the header. But keep in mind that if you're using it primarily to house the navigation links, that the navigation links for your website should sit within a nav element, if that's okay. Wait, no, I mean, yes. I mean, if that's okay. That's the way I recommend it. Oh, I see another super good question, and I won't forget you. So we should have a header element. And here, what they've done here, inside our header element, their header, woo, their header has both things. Their header says, have this H1, it says Event Hub, and I want my nav element. Nice, nice, nice. And inside my nav element, I want an unordered list of 2 items. My secret is that it can be more than 2 items and your test will pass. But you have to have at least two, and one should say upcoming events and one should say past events. Each of those should be a anchor element that links to a different internal, use a different internal link using IDs to sections on the page for upcoming events and past events, respectfully and respectively. We should have a main element that contains the different sections of our page. Inside that main element, we should have at least 2 sections. And those sections, the first one should be upcoming elements. And we've got some things we want to see. Okay, so there's not actually as much space for creativity in here. You could make up, or you could make, uh, so you could make this for events in your community, events in your area of interest, but you could also just make something up. Yeah, fantastic. So with the second section with the idea of past events, and here's what those need to contain. Cool. And here it's giving you the space to say, hey, we've given you a lot of tight constraints, but you can use any text for the event descriptions and dates. And if you want just images to grab real fast, here's some image URLs. So our tests pretty carefully correspond to the user stories above. Let's take a look at your questions. And Mel's saying, hey, our first certification project's coming up. I know, I'm so excited. And this is such a good question to say, hey, Jess, you've been really pushing us. You've been really mean to us. And I have been really mean to you. Jess, you've been so mean to us about asking us to do a bunch of this work solo. And I have been so mean. Where can we get help on our solo project, or our certification project? Can we get help? Are we allowed to get help? Of course you can get help. Just because I'm mean to you doesn't mean you need to struggle by yourself. So we're still going to ask that you go through the process by yourself. So read all the documentation when you're stuck. If you're still stuck, have a look online. Carefully search to see if you can work out what else might solve your problem. You've got the option to be weird, to experiment a bit. But the very last thing in that stack of how to approach not knowing what to do is to ask someone. So asking in Discord can be a really good way to do that. But we'll go ahead. I promise that when we start looking at the certification, we're also going to talk through it. So question and answer on stream, we can absolutely look at the certification project questions, and you can ask in Discord as well. So everything's terrible. We will not just leave you hanging. And Mel's saying, hey, if we want to color the syntax in our, wow, if we want to color the syntax in our code block, should we use span class equals column blue, or is there a better tag for this? I'm going to be really cruel. The class here, if it's okay, can I say, this is a really good question, but we're going to wait and talk about this when we talk about CSS. So just because it's really unfair to say, wait for it. I'll briefly preview this, but for folks who aren't there yet, we're going to talk about some CSS concepts, and we're just not there yet. We'll do this together in a week or two, I promise. So, how you want to name your classes for applying color in CSS? You've got a lot of personal creativity, or if you're working on a team, you've got a lot of team conventions. I like class names or ID names to be as human readable and as semantically loaded as possible. So here, this class color blue, or even the class blue or blue text, would all be really solid class names. Here, you if it's just you writing the code, you can do whatever is in your heart, keeping in mind that you want to keep your CSS classes readable for your future self. So you can make a class named anything you want, but we want to pay attention to names when we think about what's the human readability. How do we remember these? Fantastic. What a good question. Mel's like, okay, but can we jump ahead? Can we start loosely planning our certification project now? Or should we wait for the group? Y'all, I am, I, I work for you. I am not here to tell you to keep to any schedule, but way more importantly, I am not here to hold you back. If you want to go ahead and look at the let's get the link for the certification project. And we got to, Mighty Unicorn's like, help, help, help. Is the certification project similar to a lab? Not a problem. It's all of our first time doing one. So a certification is a lot like a lab, except it's more open-ended. The lab gives you some constraints. The certification, where are we? Certification project. Where's the first? Someone help me. Where's the first certification project? Is the first one building a survey form? Oh, yeah, yeah, that the first one is building a survey form. And I don't love forms. Let's do it together. So it feels a lot like a lab, but it's I am constantly pushing at y'all to be as creative and be as silly and be as weird as you want to be. With the certification projects, the goal behind these is that when you finish the bootcamp, you've got the start of some portfolio pieces to start to continue to build on. So for these, even more than with your labs, get weird. Yeah. So our certification, we can get as weird as we want. We've got two sets of constraints. The first one, we've got three sets of constraints. The first one is we need to use these user stories. Gosh, and there's a bunch. So the certification projects are also bigger than the labs, yeah? So these will take you a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks. It is okay if you need more time to work on these. Everything is terrible. The whole world is stressful and scary. There are no hard deadlines on it. I mean, the only hard deadlines for these are the ones in your heart. I will say that with the certification project, I see a lot of learners say, no, I'm not finished until this is perfect. So the approach of saying, I just want to build something and get all my tests to pass, and then come back and make it better and make it better. That's what I really like to encourage folks to do with the certification projects. So the first constraint are you need to build these user stories and get your test to pass. The second constraint is if you're going to be showing this off, if you're going to be showing a link to a snippet of your code, if you're going to show a screenshot of what you made in Discord, we love it. But there's a code of conduct that applies. Let me grab the code of conduct link. And you need to make sure that obviously none of y'all would, but you need to make sure that your haha. So if you go to badwebsite.club/code-of-conduct, it'll just be a little refresher of the kinds of the ways we interact with each other and the kinds of content we do and don't share. So none of y'all would, but your second constraint is keep it to the code of conduct, please. And the third constraint is um, we should also have a thing. If we want to use these certification projects as the sort of the seeds, the seedlings of our portfolio projects that we might want to use when we're looking for a job or showing a freelancer um, or showing somebody that we can do some freelance work, we might want to go ahead and make something the same way we don't want to violate the code of conduct, we might want to make something that looks professional. So your constraints are your test got to pass, it's got to be something appropriate, and you want to go ahead and if you're going to show this off, you can have a think about not just appropriate and won't get you in trouble with the code of conduct, but also is this professionally appropriate to show off? And Mel's saying, hey, hey, hey. So if we can take longer, and we can take longer, could we keep doing our certification projects? Could we keep working on it when we look at CSS? Heck yes, you can. And could we add CSS to it as we learn? Yes, yes, yes. And Michael's saying, Jess, is there a way we could showcase our work and get feedback? Yeah, so there's a couple different ways we could do this. And actually, if it's okay, I'm going to write a guide to sharing your projects. I'm going to go ahead and write this up as, I'm going to write this up as a piece of documentation and throw this on the Bad Website Club. And I'll also drop it into the Discord when I'm done. There's a couple of different yep. So you've got it right away. You could put this in a GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket repo. You put this on a code editor like CodePen. There's a bunch of different tools we could use where we could just copy and paste these over. And I want to go ahead and write just a quick guide to these. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Mel makes a solid point. Don't forget that the free CodeCamp forums have spaces for project review. Let me grab those. If I'm telling you a secret, I don't really like, this is going to be an old lady secret, but I don't really like Discord myself. But the free CodeCamp forums have a space for project review and show and tell. And that is forum.freecodecamp.org. So let me write up, you know what, I might get to this next week. That's a little lazy. Let me add a to do for myself too. Write up a little guide to, hey, if you want to share your projects. Okay, you all are super, super lovely to let me get a, oh, heck. I was just saying thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for letting me learn with you. And I was so excited that we've had an easy day that I almost forgot to talk through our solo work. So we've been talking about semantic HTML. And tomorrow, I try not to be too negative about stuff, but from tomorrow, we're moving on from deeply focusing on semantic HTML, even though we're still going to be writing semantic HTML, and we're going to be deeply focusing on forms. I always find forms a little fiddly. And this is just me. I meet tons of developers, web developers who are like, I love forums. I love forums. And y'all are going to find different things you love and love less. But I love forms a little bit less. So for tomorrow, if you're working real time, could I ask you to read the theory for how do forms, labels, and inputs work and take notes? Please take tons of notes about the different types of buttons and especially when you should use them. We're also going to talk about client-side form validation in HTML forms. This is so many jargony tech words all at once. So y'all are probably going to have a whole bunch of notes for this and a whole bunch of questions. And there's so many theories tomorrow. So because this is the first time we're doing forms, we got theory, theory, theory. We're going to have tons of notes to look at. And the different ones are different form states. Ooh, so we're doing a couple of different things that are going to be conceptually really new. And then please, after reading all of this and taking notes and writing down your questions, also get through as many steps of the build a hotel feedback form as possible. Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and let you all have hopefully a very easy, if it's morning, y'all better have the nicest day. If it's the afternoon, I hope the rest of your day is sunny and mellow. And if it's nighttime, y'all go to bed. I will see you tomorrow and then on Thursday. and Friday, you get the wonderful Carmen. Excitingly, oh, don't let me forget. Where, sorry, I'm yelling at you like it's your job to remember for me. We're also going to, next week, we've got a speaker I'm really excited about. Gosh, you get to watch me just scroll around. So we're looking at accessibility next week, and we have a speaker, Sarah Joy. And Sarah is going to give us a talk that I saw online, and I loved it, and answer your questions. And it's going to be whimsically, bringing the joy and whimsy to everyone. It had a real bad website club vibe, isn't it? So she's going to be talking to us about accessibility, but with this joyous, silly, chilled out approach. Yeah, I will see all of y'all. I'll see all of y'all who can make it tomorrow. There's never any obligation to join us live. And for folks who are watching asynchronously, y'all are also obligated to please have the easiest day you can, if you don't mind. Bye, loves. Thank you so much.